Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to be here today along with my colleague here, the Minister of Transportation and Works, to provide an update on the moose management and government's new approach to integrated moose management planning in this province. So today we are releasing the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador's Moose Management Plan, 2015 to 2020. This 5-year plan was developed to provide an overarching framework for moose management in the province. It spans 5 years and incorporates biological, social, and economic concerns. It focuses on maximizing the sustainable use of the moose resource for hunters and outfitters, which provides economic benefits to rural Newfoundland. From a societal perspective, it also addresses the increasing concerns regarding moose vehicle collisions. The 5-year moose management plan is supported by a $1.8 million investment over the next 5 years through Budget 2015. I'd like to start by looking at the history of the moose population in the province. You can see to the slide here and to the left of me. As we all know, moose were first introduced to the province in the late 1800s with the hope that the population would increase and provide residents with a new game species and a source of fresh meat. From 2 introductions, one in 1878 in the Gander Bay area and a second in 1904 near Howley, the island moose population rapidly colonized a new environment and were distributed across the island by 1945. And because moose on the island have no significant predator, such as wolves, hunting continues to be the primary mechanism for managing the moose population. The first legal moose hunt was in 1935, and by 1953, close to 5,000 licenses were available. A year later, in 1954, hunting zones were established to distribute hunting pressure and target harvesting towards high-density moose areas in Central. The moose population experienced its first population peak in the late 1950s, but then the decline throughout the 1960s. The reason for the decline was a combination of hunting and lower reproduction. In 1973, a revised moose management program was initiated, which saw the island divided into 10 moose regions according to known habitat, quality at the time, and the amount of access provided by roads. Each region was subdivided to create 36 moose management areas. This helped distribute the harvest and to provide for harvest in remote areas, while at the same time limiting overharvest in more accessible areas. The system of moose management areas was eventually expanded to the current 52. After adopting the 1973 strategy that provided for the delineation of moose management areas and a mechanism to distribute harvest, populations began to increase again until the mid-1990s. During this period, the moose population was estimated at just over 140,000 animals. Increases in quotas since the late 1990s have decreased the island-wide population to its current estimated population of just over 112,000 animals. When we first embarked on developing this plan, we knew it would be critical to let the public tell us how they felt the moose population in the province should be managed. And so in 2012, we undertook an extensive public consultation process through which we heard the opinions of more than 1,700 members of the public through 8 public sessions held province-wide, an online survey, and written submissions. Although there were regional differences of opinion amongst participants, overall public opinion was that moose in the province are important for a variety of reasons, including as a food source, for economic and charitable benefits, for tourism, and as part of our culture and heritage. While opinions varied somewhat, there was a strong desire to maintain current numbers of moose, or to have more moose to maximize hunting opportunity, but participants also indicated a desire for government to enhance mitigation efforts to improve human safety as it pertains to conflicts with moose. There were distinct differences in opinions between participants living on the eastern side of the province when compared with participants who live more central, on the west coast, or on the northern peninsula of Labrador when it comes to issues such as changes to hunting quotas and the importance of getting a license versus getting a moose. All regions shared a similar opinion on some issues. However, such as the use of outfitters to help manage moose populations in remote locations. The differences expressed across the regions suggest a need to consider a more regional and perhaps varied approach when management strategies are developed and implemented. Clearly, no one-size-fits-all when it comes to moose management. The results from the public consultations were incorporated into the 5-year moose management plan. The plan will be implemented and the results evaluated over the course of the next 5 years with a goal to continuously improving moose management in the province. Today, we are also releasing the results of the public consultation process, and this What We Heard document is now available on the Department of Environment and Conservation's website. A 5-year strategic plan for moose management will provide a framework and direction for moose management for 2015 to 2020. This plan is not intended as a replacement for the existing annual planning process, but will be used to guide the annual plans completed each year by the Wildlife Division and approved by the Minister of Environment and Conservation. The annual planning process will continue as a tool in establishing moose management area-specific quotas, season dates, boundary changes, and other specific management-related issues. The results of the annual planning process are provided to the public through the Hunting and Trapping Guide, which also includes an update on the progress towards the implementation of this 5-year plan. I'm pleased to advise that all of this information is contained in the 2015-16 Hunting and Trapping Guide. The guide and big game license applications are now available online and will be mailed out to all qualified eligible resident hunters tomorrow. I would like to note that we have extended the deadline for applications to May the 8th as opposed to May the 1st, which is the date that residents will see in the printed copy. The moose management plan will allow managers to work within an adaptive framework, recognizing that moose abundance and management priorities will change over time. Importantly, it provides a framework and direction for incorporating the many issues related to moose management across the landscape in a biological and social context, and ensures the collaboration and support of other government departments who have a role in moose management. Additionally, this plan identifies a vision, goals, objectives, and actions in order to allow government and the public to better assess the effectiveness of the annual plans. Public engagement as a component of this 5-year plan will ensure that moose management on the island of Newfoundland considers public interest in the resource. I'd like to take a few minutes now to provide an overview of the vision, goals, and some of the objectives laid out in the moose management plan. The overall vision of the plan is to improve the sustainability of the moose population on the island that reflects the social and ecological values of the province, while seeking to maximize the social, cultural, and economic benefits of a viable moose resource. To achieve that vision, we have identified 3 goals, each with specific objectives and actions. Our first goal is ensuring the long-term sustainability and health of moose populations and habitat across the island. Objectives within this plan will include the implementation of a regional approach to moose management that incorporates social considerations and uses statistical data, including the number of moose vehicle collisions. We will also enhance communication and engage stakeholders in the decision-making process for sustainable moose populations and continue to evaluate how they feel moose should be managed. Additionally, and significantly, much of the funding provided will allow for an enhanced moose survey schedule, allowing biologists better information with which to implement quotas. There are, of course, a number of specific actions that we will take to meet each of these objectives over the next 5 years, which are laid out in the detail of the moose management plan. Our second overarching goal is to maximize the benefits from the moose resource. We want to ensure reasonable access and benefit to and from this important resource. In the absence of predation, hunting is a primary mechanism that assists in regulating populations. Hunters remove approximately 25,000 moose annually, and their continued participation is critical to successful long-term moose management. It is also important to note that the benefits derived from the annual moose harvest provide approximately 8 million pounds of wild meat to residents of the province. Moose meat is a dietary staple for many of our residents, as well as non-resident hunters, through the outfitting industry, and collectively, the hunt contributes significant economic benefits to the provincial economy. Regulations governing moose hunting, its policies, distribution of licenses, quota allocations, harvest types, etc., must be implemented in a manner that promotes the benefits of the moose resource while ensuring that all interests are adequately represented. We also want to improve hunter education and compliance with the moose harvest management system. Hunting and trapping activities are essential components of wildlife management. Hunters are considered to be the most economically feasible means to control and manage moose populations. It is crucial that every hunter is trained to a basic standard of care to ensure harvest of big game is completed in a safe and responsible manner. Ensuring that provincial hunting education programs are accessible and responsive to critical issues involving moose hunter behavior and best practices is important towards long-term moose harvest management planning and objectives. And of course, there are a number of self-specific actions which we will take to meet these objectives and goal. And again, I encourage you to refer to the 2015-2020 Moose Management Plan for the province. Finally, our third goal of this moose management strategy is to mitigate against human-moose conflict, with our first objective in this area being to evaluate moose density, behavior, and management options in relation to roads. Currently, the relationship between the density of moose in an area and the collision rate is not well understood, nor is our understanding of the habitat use or behavior of moose around roadways. There are many factors that may affect the rate of moose vehicle collisions, including traffic volume, human population density, and vehicle speed. Our Wildlife Division is investigating moose management actions that may help to mitigate the frequency and severity of moose vehicle collisions. Improving the understanding of moose behavior and habitat use in relation to roads can provide additional insight into ways to mitigate for moose vehicle collisions. Ultimately, it is our intent to more fully understand the role hunting may have in helping mitigate the issue of moose vehicle collisions and do so in a quantitative, scientifically defensible manner. We will also work to minimize land use conflicts associated with moose. Moose feed on trees, shrubs, and other plants, and most moose interactions with agricultural activities occur on crop and Christmas tree farms where high-quality, easy accessible food exists. Conflict can also arise when moose enter cities and towns, causing traffic disruptions and public safety issues. The number of conflicts could potentially be decreased if a more integrated planning and mitigation policy were adopted cooperatively across departments. We will undertake this, and we will also review and revise existing policies on nuisance moose removal to ensure they are applicable to current agricultural and moose conflict within communities. And finally, we will continue to research, monitor, and evaluate moose vehicle mitigation techniques. In all areas of the province, residents participating in our consultations identified moose vehicle collisions as a significant concern. This government remains committed to evaluating potential measures to mitigate the rate and severity of these collisions. While most participants were willing to consider options to actively remove moose from roadsides, they were unwilling to consider complete removal of a viable moose population as a solution to the problem. The strongest support favored a more thorough evaluation of options for mitigating moose vehicle collisions while maintaining a healthy moose population and good hunting opportunities. Before I hand off to Minister Brazel to discuss in more detail the work of the Department of Works in this area, I would like to announce one potential new mitigation technique, which is the establishment of 2 moose reduction zones. The Moose Reduction Zone project will engage wildlife biologists, technical and enforcement officials in a scientific assessment in determining the effectiveness of near roadside moose removal through hunting and the relationship between the number of moose present and the rates of moose vehicle collisions that occur during the project. During our public consultations, we clearly heard that moose vehicle collisions were a significant concern for many people in the province, but there was a regional variation, with people in the eastern Avalon regions being most concerned and most willing to see reductions in hunting opportunity and success if it meant a reduction in moose vehicle collisions. The Moose Management Plan has a research component that is designed to specifically address if decreases in moose numbers and density can decrease rates of moose vehicle collisions. The moose reduction zones will provide greater opportunity for removal of near-road moose through hunting, the number of moose removed through hunting, the density of moose in the near-road zones, the density of moose in adjacent moose management areas, moose movement patterns, as well as moose vehicle collision rates and traffic volumes and speeds will all be monitored over 3 years to determine the effectiveness of the program. The results will be evaluated, and changes and/or enhancements to improve the program will be incorporated into subsequent moose management plans. So let's now take a closer look at the size and location of these zones. The zones will be 6 kilometers wide, 3 kilometers on each side of the highway from the shoulder. One zone will be located along the Trans-Canada Highway between Gander and Grand Falls, Windsor. We'll call that the Central Moose Reduction Zone. The other zone will be along the Trans-Canada Highway between St. John's and Clairville, including Veterans Memorial Drive, the Avalon Moose Reduction Zone. Detailed maps and boundary descriptions have been developed and will be available in the hunting guide online and will be sent out to all applicants who receive licenses for the zones. While this project is intended to reduce moose populations in the moose reduction zones, this initiative is not advocating for the hunting from our provincial roadways. It is especially important that all hunters be aware and recognize that existing traffic and hunter safety laws must be observed at all times. The discharge of a firearm across or from any provincial roadway is illegal. The discharge of a firearm across any provincial roadway is illegal and will be strictly enforced. The occurrence of slow-moving vehicles driven by hunters involved in the hunt will be addressed under the Highway Traffic Act as they are encountered. As always, hunters are asked to use all precautions when hunting and obeying all hunting regulations. All issues of compliance and safety will be monitored during the life of the project. There will be 200 either sex licenses available in the Central Moose Reduction Zone and 300 either sex licenses for the Avalon Moose Reduction Zone. An earlier rifle season opening is being implemented in the moose reduction zones for license holders. The Avalon Zone will open September 19, 2015 and close January 31, 2016. License holders may hunt during that season and within this moose reduction zone with either rifle or bow. The Central Zone will open August 29, 2015 and close December 27, 2015. License holders may hunt during that season within this moose management area with either rifle or bow. There is no additional pre-season bow hunting in either moose reduction zones for zone license holders. Further, an additional 875 either sex moose licenses will be distributed within Avalon moose management areas. And as mentioned earlier, the results of the annual planning process are provided to the public through the 2015-16 Hunting and Trapping Guide. The Moose Reduction Zone program has been designed to measure the effectiveness of the removal of moose near the roadside as a means of reducing moose vehicle collisions. Success of the initiative will be verified by a significant reduction in the number of these collisions when adjusted for changes in traffic volume and any potentials in moose densities not influenced by hunting. So you may be wondering what the effect of this will be on outfitting and non-resident hunting. Hunting is an effective tool for regulating moose populations in an area, but hunters must first be able to access that area. Outfitters can play an important role in managing remote populations by bringing non-resident hunters into these areas. One of the actions of the Moose Management Plan is to evaluate the current and potential role of the outfitting industry to assist with moose management in remote areas and the use of non-resident hunting to help meet moose population targets. The main goal of the plan is to ensure a sustainable moose resource for both residents of the outfitting industry while being more responsive to the social concerns surrounding moose vehicle collisions. The moose reduction zones established in the Moose Management Plan have the greatest potential for reducing moose densities near roadsides while maintaining hunting opportunities in areas away from major roads. And finally, you might not be able to see that very well back there. I can barely see it from here. Finally, a note on changes to fees and license types. The fees for moose, caribou, black bear, and small game and trapper's license have changed as of April 1st. Small game and coyote license have been combined as one license type, and a new fee of $10 has been implemented. I will note that license fees for seniors have also been increased. However, the 35% discount will remain in effect. As a senior age 65 years and older, your license will still cost 35% less than the same license purchased by a non-senior. Government estimates an additional revenue associated with license fee increases to be approximately $1.5 million a year. And with that, that's my piece. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague here, the Minister of Transportation and Works.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon. We appreciate everyone coming out today, our wildlife and conservation officers, members of SOPAC, and anybody that's been impacted by a moose vehicle collision. The 5-year moose management plan will enhance the province's ability to manage moose effectively and ensure long-term sustainability of the moose population while working to minimize moose vehicle collisions. This coordinated approach, aided by the establishment of the Interdepartmental Working Group, will complement key mitigation efforts. The approach ensures the issue of moose vehicle collisions are part of all moose management planning. That is an essential part of moose management overall. On average, there are about 500 to 600 moose vehicle collisions annually, with 5 to 10 serious injuries per year. Between January 2012 and September 2013, there were just over 1,500 collisions in total across the province. Of these, just over 1,000 were moose vehicle collisions. While moose vehicle collisions are a small percentage of the overall number of collisions in the province, it is a serious issue. We appreciate the devastating impact these collisions have on the lives of individuals and families. One moose vehicle collision is one too many. The focus is to work with partners and stakeholders on the actions that we know are effective, such as increasing public awareness and brush cutting, and to continue to collect information data to help inform the best ways forward. We also know that most moose vehicle collisions happen from May to October between dusk and dawn. You can see that the majority of moose vehicle collisions happen in clusters. Most occur between St. John's and Gander. For example, between January 2012 and September 2013, 124 collisions between St. John's and Whitburn, and that's in a distance of 89 kilometres. 82 collisions between Whitburn and Clarenville, a distance of 108 kilometres. 43 collisions from Clarenville to Gander, a distance of 138 kilometres. 22 collisions for Veterans Memorial Highway, a high number given the distance of only 37 kilometres. Despite the fact that we are all aware of the potential for a collision and that moose are on the roads, it seems we continue to speed. When you look at the table, you can see the average speeds were higher than posted speed limits in all cases. Keeping in mind, these are ideal driving conditions that are posted. This is alarming, especially when we consider there are areas where wildlife detection systems and fencing were in place, certainly demonstrating for people that those would be areas prone to moose vehicle collisions. We know from first-hand accounts and through discussions with our partners and stakeholders that speed does make a difference. Slowing down does save lives. Improving sight lines for driving also makes a difference. And it's these two areas, awareness and speed, where our focus must be as we implement steps to reduce the number of moose vehicle collisions in our province. Public awareness is critical to shift our behavior when driving and to make very simple messages to slow down actually stick. Placing a greater emphasis on public awareness and increasing signage across the province is something we've discussed with our stakeholders, and we've heard their message loud and clear. We will be working in partnership with members of SOPAC to Save Our People Action Committee to ensure public awareness efforts with a particular focus on increased signage and awareness. Brush cutting. This year, we will be investing $2 million into brush cutting. Areas selected for brush cutting are areas of high moose population and heavy growth. We will use collision data management systems to identify additional areas for more frequent cutting. There's been a positive response to brush cutting efforts over the past few years from the public and from our stakeholders. It's important this activity continues. Herbicide treatment will also continue to be used to control growth. Wildlife fencing has proven to be effective in some jurisdictions to some degree. There are mixed results. Determining the length of a fence that is best suited for our environment and if and how crossings should be used are critical to deciding how best to move forward. We will continue collecting data and monitoring the areas where we have fencing in place. Part of this work will also include assessing where there may be potential for additional wildlife fencing. For example, between St. John's and Whitburn, which is known to be a high-traffic area, is one area that we will be addressing in the near future. Technology. Seeking new ways to address issues and resolve challenges is a hallmark of innovation and progressive thinking. There's a role for technology to reduce moose vehicle collisions. And it is part of the approach we are taking to reduce moose vehicle collisions on our roads. We will investigate and assess new technologies being applied in other jurisdictions with a view of how they may be adopted here in our province. Examples of technology that have been used in the past and are being used presently: Ontario tried moose detection systems, now trying radar technology. We are monitoring these progresses. We're also looking at other jurisdictions, nationally, internationally, to look at what may be in the best interest of technology uses in this province. I want to end by saying part of our process will be very closely working with the stakeholders in this province. There is no one quick solution to the mitigation of moose vehicle accidents. It has to be a collaborative approach, and it has to be a uniform approach around many aspects. We want to build on the data collected. We want to find creative, innovative ways to do it, but we want to do it in a partnership. Thank you very much, and we're open for questions now.
Absolutely.
We'll now take questions from the
I'm just
media.
wondering, I know that population control through hunting was part of the strategy before, so what, and it hasn't, in the eyes of some people, really worked as well as it should. What makes you confident that what you're proposing now will be more successful?
You know, we need to, the reason we're putting the new moose reduction zones in place is to try to understand if that will have a direct impact on your road moose that are in the area. So part of the funding that we're providing is to do some studies around that, to make sure, to see what kind of impact it will have going forward. So, you know, we need to do the research, we need to enact our plan, do the research around that, and analyze the data. We need to make informed decisions, and that's part of this process.
Mr. Brazel, you mentioned briefly that other jurisdictions are using this radar technology. Can you explain how that would work?
Well, it's Ontario are one particular ones that are now looking at that, and it's a sensor, heat sensor radar, where they identify the animal, and then they can offset sensor notifications as you move on the highway as part of that. Again, it's a new piece of technology. You know, we want to make sure that it's a proven piece of technology before we move there, but we will be having close dialogue as they get their data collected over the next, 2 years to 36 months.
Do you have any results from the pilot project on the West Coast, and has that seen success?
Well, there's indications that it's successful. That we've seen what we feel is a reduction in the moose vehicle collisions. The issue becomes around again at the end of the fence. Are there more moose going there? Are we just moving them further down? So we need to find ways to move them across the highway in a safe manner, and then also to collect that data to see, are they migrating back into that side of the highway, or are they going further and coming across? Or are they just doing, it's called bouldering, where we put large stones at the end of it to make sure that they stay away from that. There's also issues around, our terrain is very rough in the winters and that, about is there damage to the fence, is the snow conditions height that the moose themselves can just walk over? So all that data is being collected. We have our officers looking at it, we have our own officials looking at it, we ask the general public. Part of that will be, how we carve out a partnership with SOPAC about getting information that the general public sees. So we can also collect that data to have that as part and parcel of how we move forward.
As you consider the options, what sort of factor does cost play in these different?
Well, right now cost hasn't been an issue. What we're looking at now is coming up with something that's going to be effective, that we know will work. I mean, we've invested money in the past in the pilot project, and it showed promise at the beginning. Unfortunately, it weaned off, and now it's determined that it isn't the best approach for us. It gives people a false hope. We want to make sure what we put in place, obviously, when people are on the highway, they feel safe, that this will mitigate the contact they will have with moose.
But, I mean, if you're going to tear up a highway and put an underpass, comes at a significant cost.
There's no doubt there's a costing associated with it, and 15 kilometers of fencing now with overpasses would be in the vicinity of $5 million. So once we're confident that that's the approach to go, obviously then we'll identify the funding source and go that route.
I feel like when hunters receive the package or sending in all this information, that there could be some concern with certain areas being reduction zones and then not having the same advantages when the moose season opens up. If you're looking at it for the perspective of, seeing if that brings the number of MVCs down, why not do that across the entire island?
Well, what we want to do, I mean, this is basically a study that we're doing here and that we're announcing here today in the short term. So we need to understand in the areas now that we've identified that have high rates of moose vehicle collisions. We just went through the numbers of the rates earlier. So we've identified these areas between St. John's and Clarenville, between Gander and Grand Falls and Windsor, that have high rates of moose vehicle collisions. So we're going to put it in place now, these these moose reduction zones, get some information, gather some information around that to understand it better, to see if it will work in if it does work. And if it does work, we will then incorporate into other areas of the province. If the people of the area, of the region, and you know, the other roads in the province in that area want to do this, we will do that. So it's, we're going to study this and understand it better and see what kind of impact this is going to have before we move forward with other moose reduction zones.